Hello, I want to play a game. You call yourself a horror movie expert. Now, I put you to the test. How much blood would you shed to stay alive? Let the games begin. Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies. What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
He'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream. Drop the front time, bitch! Live or die.
Make your choice.
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I am the SaWGuy. A little theatrical right there, I know. But you know what? Today is fucking Halloween. And you're joining me for episode 35 on my cult favorite. Oh man, I can't even say. This is my absolute favorite fucking horror film of all time. The original Saw. I'm playing off a little bit of that tagline that if it's Halloween, it must be Saw. And, you know, it's funny because a lot of people have asked me and told me, and made comments like, how come you're such a huge Saw fan, but you haven't done Saw yet? Well, sit back and relax. I'm going to tell you right now, I was saving this episode for Halloween. I mean, it's in the tagline, really. But anyways, I know everybody knows Saw. Some of the newer generations, yes. Younger generations, everybody has their different views on it. And I'm going to, like I do in every episode, I'll break it down for you, and tell you my input and tell you what the whole story was about, right? So, originally Saw, most people classify this as torture porn. It's not really torture porn, but it's this whole film. What I love about Saw is that what Michael Myers did in Halloween, Saw did in 2004, right? So the whole story of Saw, let me get you, back to speed of everything and how it all came about and everything. All right, so, I know, I can you tell I got a lot to say. Anyways, the whole story of Saw was built by two writers, right? And it was these two friends. They went to film school together, they became best friends, and they lived in Australia. And you had James Wan, who we all know is like the next Wes Craven, eventually at this point. Then you have Leigh Whannell, who is just as par up there for helping James Wan write a lot of his movies, But anyways, they were film students, they wrote this film, and as soon as they got out of, school, they basically said, okay, well, let's make a film. They tried to pitch their ideas to Hollywood, didn't work out, and actually they filmed a short, and their short was basically the whole jaw trap scene and everything. I'll post a link in the comments below for you guys, so that way if you've never seen it, it's actually pretty cool for a short. They send that out to Hollywood, and we're sending it out to all these different production companies, and they got greenlit. They got the idea sold, and, then Saw was born, right? The film was so low budget, it was just, because you're making an independent film, it's got to be low budget, right? And when they put it all together, they came up with this story, right? And they came up with the story of, I guess you could say it's more of a thriller than, slasher, gasher. Saw was really different. It really was. Because the movie starts off, I always laugh about this because I remember the first time I saw Saw. I went to go see it because it was an independent film festival or something going on. I had a cousin at the time who worked in Hollywood, and he's like, hey, they're playing all these independent films, you want to go see it? I was like, screw it, So we went, and that's how I saw Saw. But when it was originally released, it was released in 2003 as an independent film. It wasn't really big and blown out until the following year. But anyways, when I went to go see it, I'll never forget where it showed twisted pictures, and it shows a barbed wire, snap back, and then flash, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? This is going to be good. I mean, it's got a good intro already right there. Then you hear like the ominous music and everything. And then, you see a guy in a bathtub, or he's underwater or something. Just, you see this light floating around. And it's weird, right? Then all of a sudden he wakes up. This light goes down the tube. You find out later on what it is, right? He wakes up, and he's in the dark, out of this tub, and then he's, like, shackled down to a chain. And, he was like, where the fuck am I, Then he starts hearing another voice of another guy in there with him. He's like, hold on, wait a minute. Let me turn on the lights. They turn on the lights. It's two guys chained in a bathroom on each end. And then all of a sudden, the film just, like, zooms in, zooms out, and it shows that you see this guy who, it looked like he committed suicide. He shot himself. And he's laying on the floor dead. And, the guy who wakes up from the tub, his name is Adam. And he starts freaking out. And the other guy's like, hey, there's nothing you could do. I woke up before you. I've been trying to yell and scream. And the whole premise of this movie is that these two guys are locked in the room. They don't know what for. They have to work together and see. And that's what makes it really cool, is the fact that they're kind of introducing each other and everything. Then they figured out, oh, shit, we have, there's a tape in my pocket. What the fuck, right? And it just so happens the guy who shot himself in the middle, he was holding a tape recorder on one hand, and then he's holding a gun on the other, right? And so eventually they work together, they get the tape, and then they hear that, this ominous voice we all know, right? Rise and shine, Adam. This is your wake-up call. And, he tells him, basically in an ominous way, that he knows who he is. And he says, you're just one of those people that watch, you don't do anything. So what are you going to do? Then the other person who is chained up with him, he's actually a doctor. His name's Dr. Lawrence Gordon, right? So he's telling him, hey, well, throw me the tape player. He's like, no, you throw me the tape. They go back and forth. He throws the tape. They play his tape. And, they basically tells him the same thing. I know who you are. Basically, your game, this is a game that you guys are both chained up. And the game is you have to kill Adam. Otherwise, your wife and kid die. You find out, like, in the next 5 minutes who Allison and Diana are, which is the wife and kid. So anyways, they work together and everything, start talking. And then all of a sudden, he hears in the voice message, on the tape player. He's like, wait, hold on, pass me the tape player. He actually throws him the tape player. And then he listens to it. And then the voice gives out a little hint that says, follow your heart. Well, they see that there's a heart on the toilet. He tells, Adam, hey, dig in the toilet. And what's funny about this, there's a lot of dark humor in this film. He puts his hand in the toilet. And he's like, you find anything? No solids. Because it was just, shit water, basically. And he says, okay, we'll take off the tank top and then look on the top. And then he's like, well, I should have checked in there. He opens a bag and finds out there's, hacksaws, for cutting wood and shit. So he basically takes out his and starts cutting. And then, Dr. Gordon's like, hey, you going to pass me the other one? He sends him the other one, but then he throws the bag in the tub, which you find out later, right? And then all of a sudden, they try to cutting through the chains. Adam breaks his, and he's like, fuck! Throws it to the side. Dr. Gordon, he finally picks up the fact that, hey, he doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet, right? And then he's like, I think I know who did this. And this movie, it has a lot of flashbacks, right? So it goes into the flashbacks of who he thinks it is and how everything had built up to that moment, right? So he starts telling Adam this story about, he's like, the only reason why I know about this is because I was considered a suspect, right? Then you see, Danny Glover, who plays Detective Tapp. You see Ken Leung. He's one of the bad guys off Rush Hour. He played in one of the X-Men films. Then you see Dina Meyer, who before that, she was famous in Starship Troopers. She was also big in, Birds of Prey, the DC superhero show. She was Batgirl. So I was like, oh shit, Batgirl. They get to the scene of the crime, and you see this dude who's inside, his name's Paul. He's this big guy, and he's stuck on this razor wire just hanging like this because he's, obviously dead. And they basically said, yeah, he was in a razor wire maze, and, he was running around it so fast that he got cut deep. So deep that there was traces of stomach acid. And it was like, whoa, okay, so this gets you hooked, right? And then she plays the same anonymous tape, right? And then they basically said, okay, well, we're going to look around and see what's going on. They see that puzzle pieces were taken out of the victims that were dead, right? And then they show the scene of a next one, and his name was Mark. And his test was, well, before I go to Mark, Paul, the reason why he was in a razor wire trap is because he was a guy who was, cutting himself. So basically, this voice said, hey, we're going to go ahead and see if you want that, if you're doing that for attention, or if you really wanted to die. So show me, you know? So that's why he was in that trap. Then you have Mark, who's basically a guy who fakes and tells everyone that he's sick. And he's like, okay, well, if you're sick, then how come I have so many photos of you up and about? Well, let's put your illness to the test. So this was one of my favorite ones and most brutal, because this guy is butt-ass naked. He has a flammable jelly all over on him. And he's, stepping in, like, glass all over on the floor. And then he has poison inside him. So the only way he get the antidote is if he, finds a combination to the safe, and it's written on the wall. And he has to go around and look for it as he's stepping on glass, right? And he has to carry this little candle. And the substance that's all over him is flammable, right? Well, obviously, he doesn't survive. There's no time limit, so he drops it. They go to the crime scene of that. And then they basically found out that there's this pin light in there, right? That pin light belonged to Dr. Gordon, which, you see a scene that he's, he's a doctor teaching these kids, these med students and stuff. He gets paged. Then the cops talk to him. And they basically said, okay, well, can you tell us where you were in the hours of this time? And he's like, well, I was here at the hospital. They're all like, you sure about that? Come down to the station. So he goes down to the station, talks to his lawyer, who's also his friend. And then that's when Dr. Gordon starts, to admit his lies that, hey, he was seeing a woman that wasn't his patient. And he got away with it because that was his alibi. He really was. Then it, shows that they were going to talk to this other person. Her name's Amanda, played by Shawnee Smith, I still have my crush on her, yeah. But anyways, they tell her story because she was the only one that survived this, this hallucinating trap from this, serial killer madman. And they started giving him the name Jigsaw because he would cut out jigsaw pieces out of everybody, right? Well, he wouldn't cut them out of everybody. He cut them out of all the ones that didn't survive. So Amanda tells her story, and it's the infamous jaw trap. And what I love about that scene is you never seen it in horror films where it was just like, okay, I'm going to put you in a trap. You need to find your ways to get out without killing yourself, And it all had a meaning to it, and I'll get to it towards the end of this episode. But anyways, they show the whole jaw trap scene. Then they show the camera angles, which was just insane. It just spins around as she's like, trying to get the jaw trap off. And, it was different for a horror film. You never saw that, She breaks out, then it shows like the camera all moving around. She's going crazy. It showed anxiety. It showed like the thrill of everything. And her trap was she has a jaw trap on her. And she has to cut through her dead cellmate's stomach and, get the key out of his stomach and then take it off within under a minute, right? Well, the guy wasn't dead. And, a lot of people will say, there's a lot of different theories out there of who it was and stuff. They were saying, okay, it was a drug dealer and shit. They never announced who it was, right? So, the whole jaw trap scene happens, cuts open the guy, digs through, and it shows all the scenes where she gets the key, takes it off right in the nick of time, then it snaps. Then you see the little Jigsaw doll, and he was not given the name Billy yet. He was given the name Billy in part 2, but he comes out on the tricycle, and then you hear Jigsaw's voice, congratulations, you're still alive. Most people are so ungrateful to be alive. This film had a lot of great quotes in it, right? So after, she gives her statement and everything, and Dr. Gordon's listening into it, then basically they pan back into the whole bathroom scene of everything that's going on, and then they start talking, what did they do before they were in the bathroom, right? Adam tells his story where he's like, I went to bed in my shithole apartment, and I woke up in an actual shithole. There was a lot of little funny puns. He was a photographer. He took pictures, went home. He fell asleep when he was developing his film. He wakes up, and then it shows that, all his lights are off. And then all of a sudden he, hears his doll laugh, and then that's when he sees the Billy doll. Beats the shit out of it. Then he hears a noise in the closet, and he's like, who's in there? I'll kill you, you motherfucker. I mean, it played on his character so well. And what most people don't know is that, the character Adam is actually Lee Winnell, the guy who wrote SaW, and it blew my mind after I found that out, after I first saw this film, right? And then it shows somebody in a pig mask jumps out and grabs him, right? Then Dr. Gordon tells about his story, how he went to a hotel. Well, before he went to a hotel, he was typing something up. His daughter had a bad dream. And, his daughter wakes up his wife. His wife says, hey, your daughter had a bad dream. You got to go handle it? He's like, yeah, in a minute. And he played off the fact that he was, too busy for his kids, which was fucked up, He didn't take his life, well, he took everything that he had for granted. And anyways, he was done typing. He went in there, had a father-daughter moment. And then the daughter starts asking him, hey, you're not going to leave us, right? And it was very odd how she had asked that. And she kept saying that she had this man in the closet with her, right? And it was kind of odd and weird. And you're like, what the fuck, right? So he gets a page. He has to go. Him and his wife, they have a little spat. And, she's just like, just get the fuck out of here. He leaves. As soon as he leaves, there really was a man inside the closet who you'll find out in a bit. He comes out and he has this sheet over his head. There was a lot of little winks to different horror films. Obviously that one was the Halloween. He kidnaps the girl and his wife, ties them up, and then he does weird shit just to kind of like make the audience just like, He pointed a gun at the mom and was listening to the daughter's heartbeat. Originally they had planned to do other stuff, but they didn't want to take it too far, right? So as that's all going on, then they figured out that, as they're still talking, back to the bathroom scene, they figured out, okay, there's other clues, And he basically was like, okay, well, turn off the light. He turns off the light. He sees the glowing X that's on the wall. They break it open. They figure out that, there was a box, there was a key. Well, Dr. Gordon had a key with his tape. He opens it up, and it's a note from Jigsaw that says the cigarettes are harmless, because there were cigarettes. And he says, think about this. You don't need a gun to kill Adam, right? He's basically telling him, dip the cigarette in the blood and give him the cigarette, and he'll die of poisoning, right? And, as they're arguing back and forth, I believe Adam, he gets all pissed off, and then he throws, something at the mirror. Then they find out it's a two-way mirror, and it's a camera watching every one of their moves. And the person watching is the guy who kidnapped his wife and kid. So it's got a lot of back and forth stuff. And then eventually, they figured out, okay, we're going to try and fuck with this guy. They turn off the lights, and they said, okay. So he gives him the cigarette, makes it look like he died. And then he gets electrocuted and wakes up. And he's like, what the fuck? And little by little, this film shows that they're like calm, and then they go crazy little by little, right? So it explains all of them. Then it explains, how he was a photographer and how he knew Dr. Gordon. And it goes about, that there was a cop, who was the cop, Danny Glover, who interviewed the doctor and was basically still thinking that Dr. Gordon had something to do with it. So he paid him to take pictures and stuff like that. And then later on, that bag of hacksaws that he pulled out, there was a bunch of pictures. He throws out the pictures as they're arguing. And then basically he sees a picture of this guy and he recognizes him. This guy was the guy who works over there in the hospital with him. And he's, I guess, like a caretaker or like a janitor. And he's like, you fucking bastard, fuck, I'll kill you, and it builds up the intensity, it really does. And then you find out what happened with Detective Tapp, and you find out that, he's watching over the Amanda tape and everything. He finds out that, where Jigsaw's lair is, by seeing, like, the gang symbols and shit in the background. And then, also, too, hearing, like, that there was a fire alarm going off somewhere in that area. So, him and Detective Singh, his partner, they went to go break in without a warrant. They see Jigsaw's lair. They see this guy sitting on a chair. They never explained who this guy is. Even later on in the series. His name was Jeff, and he was in the drill chair. Zzz, right? He wakes up, and then all of a sudden, when Jigsaw comes in, dressed in this robe, of course, he tells him, okay, I got to use stronger tranquilizers. And then that's when they bring him down, and then Jigsaw starts to trap. Then he starts just talking, I'm sick of it all. Sick of this. Yes, officer, I'm sick of people who don't have their blessings. He says that as a distraction, pulls out, a gauntlet from his wrist and cuts Detective Tapp's neck and tries to run out. Singh shoots him and chases after him and says, hey, you'll be fine. I'll go take care of him. And this is another one of my favorite traps I like, right? He goes in there, he sees him, he falls after he shoots him. Then as he's going, he sees all the spider web. He doesn't see that there's, a fishing line there. And once he taps it, all of a sudden you see like 12 shotguns. And they're all on a hair trigger. Boom, 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 boom. And his partner was killed, right? Then it basically tells you, well, this film has so many parts going. You had to pay attention to it to understand it, right? So you have the cop's viewpoint. You have Dr. Gordon's viewpoint, Adam's viewpoint, what's going on currently. And then it all blows to steam because he had to kill Adam before 6. And then that's when, there was a phone inside the box. They were calling Dr. Gordon. And they were saying, okay, your time's up. We're going to kill her. And that's when, the wife breaks out, tries to find out what's going on. And then Detective Tapp, he has like a camera, watching over him. Then he sees that there's action going on, that there's a gunfire and shit. So he goes, and then he ends up chasing Zepp. That was the guy's name. All over. And then, his wife and kid get out. Dr. Gordon's going crazy. And it's to the point where it builds all this anxiety, right? He goes so fucking mad. He cuts his own fucking foot off, right? Cuts his foot off, gets to the gun. He has one bullet, puts it in there, shoots at him. And then he basically says, there, I did it. Now show my family to me. And, at this point, you're just like, what the fuck? Detective Tapp, I guess you could say he interfered in the game, right? He sees Zepp, they're fighting back and forth, and when he takes him down, he mistakenly shoots himself. End of the movie, Well, not end of the movie, but end of Detective Tapp, right? Then Zepp goes in to see what's going on, and then Dr. Gordon's chasing after him, with the 1 foot. I'll kill you! I'll kill you! And then he's like, you're too late. Why? Because there are rules. Adam wakes up, pulls him down, beats the shit out of him with the top part of the toilet. Dr. Gordon tells him, hey, I'm going to go find some help. I'm coming back, I promise. So Dr. Gordon leaves. And then all of a sudden, as Adam's like digging through his body of Zepp's, because he's dead, he sees that there's this weird tape player. And then he's like, oh, fuck. So the whole movie makes you think that Zepp was the main guy on it, right? And then they play Zepp's tape. And then that's when it starts, the new theme. Well, not the new theme, but it's the theme, the SaW theme they call Hello, Zepp. And it's basically, Jigsaw's voice talking about, how he poisoned Zepp and he put Zepp in a situation where if he wants to live, he has to kill a wife and daughter. And they didn't get too much into his trap a little bit or his storyline, other than the fact that he was involved in some way. And then, the biggest twist of this is that when Adam's hearing it, all of a sudden the guy in the fucking middle wakes up. He wakes up, stands up, and then he pulls the fake, shit off his head and everything, make it look like he shot himself. And then he told him, the key to that chain is in that bathtub. So when he wakes up, the little blue light, it was supposed to be in his pocket, but it wasn't. It was floating around, so when he woke up, it went down the drain. So he's fucking stuck, right? So when he gets up, he tries to get Zepp's gun and tries to shoot him. And it was Jigsaw who was electrocuting everybody. Zzz, and it showed all these flashes. And then after that, you hear the main part of the theme. Then he says, most people are so ungrateful to be alive. Then he gets to the door, it gets dark, and then he's like, game over. Slams the door shut as Adam screaming, no, don't. End of the movie. Great fucking film. And to this day, it still holds up, What I love about this film is that I got to live that generation to see how SaW changed the world of horror films. It really did. Because, as we all know, there's always copycats of every film. I mean, look at Halloween. That really put, the slasher genres on the map. Then you had Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger, and all these other slasher villains that came out. SaW, when that came out in 2003 as an independent film, it blew up so big that Lionsgate Films bought it. And then the following year, they released it on Halloween, which... it's kind of weird. I don't know why they did that for Halloween, but they did it a week before Halloween. And when they released it, they basically re-released it, and they did a theatrical and a director's cut. Director's cut was the original cut. Theatrical cut was, meant for theaters. And they did the theater run. And the only difference is, they cut out a little bit of gore scenes, and they added a little bit of different filters, right? And when they did that, it became this huge fucking film because... nobody thought that this was going to be, the next big thing. Nobody did. And for what it was, I mean, if they would have left it alone and never did sequels, this would have been the greatest horror film of all time, But of course, Hollywood had to go in and do sequels. And, I'll be the first one to say, I don't complain about it. I mean, they did great with the sequels. But this episode's not about the sequels. It's about the fucking original. And what's great about the original is the fact that they not only did it on a shoestring budget, but they got great actors in it. I mean, Danny Glover, he's only pretty much well known to do Lethal Weapon, some comedic films. Cary Elwes, most people remember him from Robin Hood and Tights, The Princess Diaries, I mean, that's kind of a different role that he did in Saw, you know? Other actors, you know, you had Ken Lung, who played a good guy, which he doesn't do very often. Monica Porter, you know, she played the wife. Michael Emerson, he got famous from this film, and he ended up starring in that TV show Lost, you know. This film really put a lot of people on the map, you know. James Wan, I mean, he's basically, you know, becoming the next Wes Craven, because he wrote and directed the first film with Lee Winnell. And then later on in the sequels, he didn't direct them, but he, you know, had his hands on everything. Him and Lee Winnell, they wrote the original 1, 2, and 3. And, you know, what's cool about it is that they kept on this new tradition. They started something new. And that's why I enjoy this film so much, is because I got to live through that, you know? So 2003, they released it, I think in like February. And then 2004, they released it to, you know, worldwide with the Lionsgate films on Halloween. Then after that, every year, they would release it closer and closer to Halloween. So I think it was released on October 23rd for the first one. The next year on the 24th was part 2. The next year for part 3 was on the 25th, and so forth, you know? All the way up until they did Saw 3D. And, you know, they did, what was it? Last year, 2017, they did Jigsaw, which was like the back story of everything. But, you know, when you look at Saw, a lot of people, they'll argue about the fact that it's torture porn. It's not torture porn. Everything all had a meaning. And the meaning that this film was trying to show was that Jigsaw, or John Kramer, he was suffering from cancer. He had his whole life there. Well, they don't explain it in the first one, but, you know, here this guy is. He's suffering from cancer, and he has to sit there and dwell on this doctor who has a wife and kid at home. He's living the good life. Obviously, if you're a doctor, you make good money, you know? And, you know, here he's cheating on his wife, and, you know, he wanted to teach this guy to value his life, you know? Cherish his life. That's basically what it was. With Adam, he did kind of the same thing, because Adam, I wouldn't say he was a bottom feeder. He was more or less, you know, under the radar kind of type of guy, you know. Detective Tapp and Singh, they got involved because they were the police, you know. And then with Paul, that one really, I think it hit a nerve with a lot of people, because, you know, here this guy tried to commit suicide. And Jigsaw, I don't know if he was really trying to point it out to say, hey, were you trying to do it for attention, or did you really want it to die, you know? And I think that pushed a lot of buttons with people. I really think it did. That's why a lot of people still think that, you know, that's one of the most gruesome traps. And then when you talk about what happened with Mark, how he burned so many people, which I love the aspect that he had the flammable substance on him, and then he had to carry the candle, and he had to be careful, otherwise it would burn him. But the fact of, you know, he had to get into this safe, and there's numbers all around him and shit, and then he had to step on glass. That's fucking brutal. I mean, to this day, like, I know, I get a lot of shit from everybody, because they're like, what's your favorite trap? And I don't tell them it's the jaw trap. Everyone's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Well, yeah, I know. But the jaw trap I really like. It's just, I like the original aspect of it, because remember I said that there was a short film. Take a look at that short film in the description below, and let me know what you all think in the comments, because that short film, I mean, even though it was, 9 minutes, it was fucking amazing. Because they did it all on a budget, you know, but they actually had to use real stuff. They actually got a real bear trap, flipped it upside down. They knew somebody who was, I guess you could say a metal worker or an engineer, and he made a real working trap. And they actually used that for that short film. And Billy, the doll, was actually a doll that was made from James Wan's own creation. He basically got, you know, I was going to say toilet paper tube, paper towel tube, and then he made it, the head and everything, out of paper mache and a balloon, and then went from there. He painted it, and, you know, here you have this new icon, Jigsaw, right? Or Billy the Puppet, I should say. And it was really cool. There's just so many little aspects and tidbits that makes this film so good. And this film, you know, everybody that worked on this film, they all worked together all the way up, I think, until Saw 6, if I'm not mistaken. So you had the same production designer. You had the same film editor. You had, you know, the same people that were doing different things on this film. And, you know, James Wan wasn't afraid to put his own touch on things. And, you know, like the jaw trap scene where the camera's spinning all around. You know, that's something different. You don't see that in horror films. I mean, now you do because, you know, like I said, there was copycats. But at the time, you never did, you know? And then the fact that a lot of the film was really dark because when they shot it, there was too many bright scenes. So what they did, they basically got green paint and painted it so it had that green tint to it, which was really cool. I was surprised. I was like, oh, shit. And then because they didn't have enough money to come back and bring the actors in for a couple shots, you might see it in some of them. The part where they go into Jigsaw's lair, where you see Detective Tapp and Ken Leung, they go inside Jigsaw's lair, right? And if you watch it on full screen, you see it's Lee Winnell's face. They tried zooming in where you just see like the shotgun come out, you know, but if you watch it on full screen or zoom in, you can actually see it's, you know, Lee Winnell's face. The part where Amanda is, you know, digging through the guts and everything, trying to find the key, that was Lee Winnell's hands. So I thought it was pretty interesting how they did little things like that, you know, the magic of filming, or of Hollywood, I guess, you know. But it was really cool. And SaW, to me, still will always be one of my favorite films because of all these little tidbits, because I got to live in that generation. You know, you talk to people who lived in the 70s, you know, they'll tell you that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the scariest shit they've seen. You know, you talk to people in the 80s, they'll tell you that it was Freddy Krueger and Jason. That was the scariest shit they've seen. You talk to my generation that lived through, you know, the early 2000s, you know, and we'll tell you that was the best shit that you can ever see. You know, it's true, because right after this film came, as I said, there was copycats. And I know people are going to say, well, give us examples, right? So I guess you could say torture. SaW was not a torture porn, right? There's other films that followed that played on a lot of the dark elements of SaW. You know, take for instance, Hostel. Eli Roth, he did, Cabin Fever. That was great for what it was, you know. Then he comes around and does Hostel, which is a similar take to SaW, but it focuses more on the torture aspect. The first SaW 1, 2, and 3 didn't, you know, it had a story built around it. Same thing with 2 and 3. The other sequels, you know, that's for another episode, you know. But the original SaW, it followed this whole aspect of a story. And, you know, you got a lot of people that are going to say, well, I don't like gore, I don't like guts, I don't like blood, you know. Let me tell you this. You take out the aspect of any of the gore and blood, and you watch the theatrical cut, you know, not the uncut version. You watch the theatrical cut. It's a really good, I guess you could say, murder suspense film. Because, you know, it's it's not something you see on CSI or like on TV or CBS or whatever. Well, I shouldn't say CBS. I should say like on the normal television networks. But, you know, it's nothing that you would see on there. I mean, it's got a little bit more in depth in the writing. It's got a little bit more of a backstory here and there, you know. And that's basically the aspect of what it was, you know. And they knocked it out of the park with that story. They really did. It was a story that was so well that they built 7 sequels off of it. And they're going to be continuing it. And hopefully they'll continue through Halloween because, you know, obviously SaWGuy will be there. And because of that film, it gave birth to who I am, what I like, you know. And, yeah, you know, so SaW's my favorite film. And with it being Halloween, I wanted to celebrate all that with you today. So, well, you all enjoy your Halloween festivities tonight. If you get a chance to watch any films, I know most people are going to probably watch the original Halloween, the new Halloween that came out. If you get a chance to, you know, sit back, relax, and, you know, take a gander on the old SaW, because that's a true icon classic. My favorites, personal favorites, top of the line, hands down, right? But you know what? Thank you all for joining me for everything today, for this Halloween festivity. Like I said, SaW will always be my favorite film. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about SaW. What's your favorite Halloween film? I know I kind of dragged it on a little bit, you know, between different horror films that tie in with something with Halloween. But you know what? Halloween's finally here. Let's go have some fun tonight, right, guys? Well, anyways, thanks for everything, guys. And I'll catch y'all next time, as always.
Bow down to the cave.